So, any questions?
Hello? In the beginning of this, why would the principle refer to actually as master?
The word isn't master, meaning somebody who has mastery over the teaching. It's almost a word like mister, a little more respectful. It's probably bo, bhavang, which is just a little bit like sir.
Okay. So it wasn't like he was a great teacher?
No.
And worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of... translates to supatipano. Is that the same thing? Ujupatipano. The last half of the paragraph. It's actually on page 996.
Yeah, it's not the supatipano part, but it's the ahuneo, pahuneo, dakineo, anjali karaneo, anutarang punyaketang lokasa.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nelia?
And then,
Okay, my question is number 22, paragraph 22, the last statement where it says, and mindfulness having put away covetousness and grief for the world.
Yeah.
What do they mean by grief for the world?
Yeah, I actually don't like this translation. I think this came from Venerable Nyanamoli. Yeah, the two words, abhijja domanasang, vinaya loke abhijja domanasang. Okay, vinaya is having removed, having put away. Loke, in relation to the world. Abhijja, it's almost the same as craving. Effectively the same as craving. That's what's rendered covetousness. And then domanassa, it's maybe, I think it's more adequately rendered displeasure or dejection rather than grief. So basically these are two kinds of worldly emotions. One is craving, grasping for things, and the other is displeasure, unhappiness, sadness. So those are the two kinds of opposite mental states that one has to be putting away through this practice.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but grief is too strong.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't convey what it really wants to say.
The word grief.
Yeah.
I think it's not such an accurate rendering. I don't use grief anymore. Now I use for domanassa, dejection. But also, even unhappiness would be quite satisfactory.
but it's like an aversion for the worldly life as well.
No, it's not the aversion for the worldly life, but it's displeasure or unhappiness over worldly things. Maybe thinking, oh, he spoke rudely to me, or I lost this, and so one feels unhappy. I didn't succeed in obtaining this or that. Well, that is vinaya, is letting go, putting away, removing.
In the Chinese version, they mention something about livelihood in terms of behavior or morality. I don't...
You wrong? You had, oh, there you are. You had the Chinese version on your tablet? Let's see if I can remember. Hu Shan Jing 明镜 again. Yeah. 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 That's the Chinese translation. I have a suspicion that it's trying to translate, because it's a bit odd that it has livelihood repeated 3 times. Usually in the Pali, it would speak about purifying one's bodily conduct, purifying one's verbal conduct, purifying one's mental conduct, and then purifying one's livelihood. So the livelihood would just be one amongst 4. But here, livelihood is mentioned in regard to all 3. It seems a little odd to me, but we don't have, I don't think there's available the Sanskrit original so that we can know exactly what it's translating. It could be purifying conduct of body, purifying conduct of speech, purifying conduct of mind.
But they're not speaking of livelihood in the typical sense, like in the Noble Eightfold Path, where they talk about one's means of making money.
Well, you see, the word livelihood is also used in relation to monastic life, in that in this context, livelihood, it doesn't mean going out to work at a remunerative job, but it refers to the means by which one obtains the necessities of subsistence, the means of subsistence. So even for a monk, he has to observe right livelihood, in that one is not supposed to sort of swindle people into providing offerings or promote oneself, boast about oneself, and say, I'm a great field of merit, you should give to me. Or try to pressure, if you don't give to me, you're going to be getting a lot of demerit, you'll be going to, you'll be reborn as a pig. Yeah, so those would be examples of like wrong livelihood. Yeah.
Before, with the dilemma, in not mentioning the first jhana, wouldn't it stand to reason that you need a certain focus of the mind before you can even begin to contemplate the 4 foundations of mindfulness? So maybe there is some truth to that first jhana is already established, the one-pointedness?
I don't think that's the case, actually. Because there are other there's a few suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya. This would be the connected discourses on the Satipatthanas, where a monk comes to the Buddha and says, I've newly come to this teaching, please give me some instruction. Then the Buddha says, first you should purify the foundation. Let me see if I can remember the exact expression. Okay, first you should purify the foundation. I think it's first you should purify the starting point.
And that would be the 4 foundations?
No. The Buddha then says, and what is the starting point? First, purify your conduct of body, speech, and mind, and straighten out your view. In other words, obtain right view. Then the Buddha says, when you have established the foundations, then when you have established the starting point, purify the starting point, then you should go further and devote yourself to the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So here the Buddha is not going through the sequential training up to the jhanas. Of course, we could assume that this aspects of the sequential training, like not mentioned, like restraint of the senses, mindfulness and clear comprehension in all activities, vigilance, those are all included within purifying the foundations. But from there, he goes directly into the 4 foundations of mindfulness.
So attaining jhanas is not necessary to contemplate the 4 foundations.
Beforehand, there's no indication that obtaining the jhanas is necessary to practice the 4 foundations. We could say that the 4 foundations of mindfulness, if practiced in a particular way, will lead to the jhanas. Not that one attains jhana first and then starts to practice the 4 foundations.
The reason I thought maybe is because you need to focus your mind to be able to penetrate these subjects fully. And
Well, one starts with the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and that is sort of the gradual training of the mind to help settle the mind and to increase the power of the mental concentration. In fact, in the Chinese version of this particular sutta, the Dantabhūmi Sutta, the Buddha says that, I think it's also in the Pali version. No, let me just see. Oh yeah, it's the practice, even in the Pali version too. It's the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Those are said to be the bindings of the mind for the noble disciple to subdue his habits based on the household life, to subdue his memories and thoughts based on the household life, to subdue the distress, fatigue, and fever based on the household life. So the 4 foundations of mindfulness are themselves the means for training the mind in order to clear away that kind of debris of worldly thoughts. So if one had achieved the first jhana, one would already be free from those kinds of thoughts. So then the 4 foundations of mindfulness then wouldn't serve the purpose of clearing those thoughts away.
cool. Thank you.
You mentioned a couple times the order that this gradual training goes in.
Yeah.
You know, with the 5 hindrances here being before the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and you said that generally they're found afterwards. Could it be safe to look at it either way, or is it better to look at it in one direction only?
I mean, certainly it's the case that somebody who has overcome the 5 hindrances can then go into the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So I'm certainly not saying that that's not the case. But what I would say is that it would generally be the case that somebody who is not yet rid of the 5 hindrances will take up the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness as part of the means or method for subduing and removing the 5 hindrances.
That makes
So it's not necessarily the case that you can't start practicing the 4 foundations until you're rid of the 5 hindrances.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if there was some flexibility, because there's other suttas that go right into jhana immediately. So if you read different suttas, I've seen different orders from one to the other, and it almost seemed like it was flexible for a reason, to say, well, one, like you just said, one person may enter this way, one person may enter a different way. And I've used that as part of my practice. That's why if it wasn't that way, it would have upset some of the things that I do.
Yeah, but what one wouldn't say is that, one wouldn't say that the Buddha, speaking about somebody who attains, say, the first jhana, and then giving instructions for him on going off to remove the 5 hindrances, because the removal of the 5 hindrances is the prerequisite for the attainment of the jhanas. But the removal of the 5 hindrances is not a prerequisite for the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because it's precisely through the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness that the 5 hindrances are removed.
One other question. When you were talking about while walking back and forth and sitting, purifying your mind of obstructive states,
Yeah.
you were saying that refers to, I guess, walking and sitting meditation.
Yeah.
Could that also refer to just more general life, like walking around, sitting, doing your daily activities? Or do you think it's specifically talking about meditation?
In this case, it's specifically talking about a meditative practice, because the word used here for chankamati is the word which usually means like the walking back and forth within a limited area as part of a meditative practice. But it doesn't mean that, when doing other activities, that one shouldn't be training the mind according to one's chosen method of meditation. But that would be covered more by the section on mindfulness and clear comprehension.
Okay. Perfect. Very good. Thank you.
What's the lion's pose? It says it in there.
Oh, right, I see, right. Yeah, it's explained elsewhere that it's lying down on the right side with one leg overlapping the other. I guess one would put the hands like this. One has to see a lion when it's sleeping. Any further questions? Yeah.
Lie on my right, and if I take my blood pressure, it is more normal than if I lie down any other way. I mean, get the 120/80. If I lie like this, if I turn around and check my pressure, it's different.
Are you looking for medical advice?
No. This observation. Now you mentioned about this.
Yeah,
lying on the right.
no doubt there's an explanation for that, but you would have to ask a medical person.
Bhante, so I'm a little confused. As a Sotapanna, some of your hindrances have been removed, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So what you're saying here is to enter jhana,
Yeah.
basically you would be higher up on that scale of Sotapanna, Anagami. Like, we're talking about arahantship here, correct?
Yeah.
So only an arahant would have all his hindrances removed.
Yeah. Okay, there are different ways of this gets into a rather complicated area, but the word abandoning or eliminating has different degrees or there are different types of elimination. Now, what is achieved by the Sotapanna and the other noble ones is eradication of certain of the hindrances or the fetters. And for the Arahat, there is the eradication of all of the defilements. Now, when one achieves the jhanas don't eradicate any of the hindrances. One overcomes them sort of temporarily through the practice. So that is what is meant by abandoning in the jhana. One temporarily overcomes. Okay, so somebody can be a jhana attainer, in which case he overcomes temporarily all of the 5 hindrances while practicing for the jhana and in the jhana itself. A sotapanna is not necessarily a jhana attainer. A sotapanna can still have, even certain of the hindrances can be strong, but the sotapanna will have eradicated certain of the hindrances. It would be the hindrance of doubt, because the sotapanna is completely free from doubt, and that's it. Actually, the only one of the hindrances that the sotapanna has eradicated is doubt. Now, the jhana attainer has temporarily overcome doubt, but he hasn't eliminated or eradicated any of the hindrances. They can still all come up.
Thank you for clarifying that, Bhante.
Sarah? Yeah.
Okay. Doubt.
Yeah. You're asking me?
Yes, Bhante.
Oh, what is doubt? I think the doubt that's eradicated by the stream enterer, by the sotapanna, would be doubt about whether the Buddha is an enlightened one, whether the Dharma, his teaching, is indicating the truth, and whether those who follow the Buddha by practicing the Dhamma have reached stages of noble attainment. So that would be unshakable confidence or trust in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. That would be the opposite of doubt, or the antidote to doubt, as one of the fetters that's eradicated by the stream enterer. In the case for the practice for the jhanas, I don't think that would necessarily be the meaning of doubt, because even those who are like non-Buddhist ascetics can practice and achieve the jhanas. The jhanas are not unique to Buddhism. So this would be the kind of doubt, I guess, whether I'm practicing correctly, whether this method will lead to the jhana, whether I have the capacity to achieve the jhana. All of those kinds of sort of nagging doubts in the mind that prevent one from focusing upon one's object. Wait, you have to move the microphone so you, yeah. I'm not catching because doubt is the biggest fetter.
Just as you said that when you in the Buddha's teachings,
Yeah.
in the path and so on. And for me, that is the biggest doubt, because, I'm still on the path. To me that seems the biggest fetter.
Well, I think it's useful to remember that the only one who's completely eradicated doubt is a stream enterer. So when one completely eradicates doubt, then one is, entered upon the irreversible path. So it's quite natural that doubts arise, but what's useful to overcome doubt, well, to continue to practice and not be distracted by one's doubt, and then to study and investigate the teaching. Then if there's points that you have doubt about, you're welcome to come and to speak with me or any other knowledgeable Buddhist teacher, and we could try to help.
Just so you know, about 5 years ago, said that about me. They said, you believe in any of it. 2 years later, they said, faith seems to be stronger.
Yeah.
And now today I'm... Oh, it goes away in time.
Okay, does anybody else have a doubt? No. Did anybody else have a question? And also, I would say that doubt should pertain to really be meaningful, pertain to what I would say the principles that constitute the core of the Dhamma. Like, I mean, sometimes there are things one reads in the suttas that I think should be doubted and even rejected. Like, sometimes talk about, okay, other world systems in which there are people are stationed according to the 4 social classes of ancient India. There are the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. In another world system, you know, that's so specific to India in this world system.
Maybe the Kalama Sutta would help.
Yeah, the Kalama Sutta is very useful. It's in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Threes, but you find it anywhere on the internet. Yeah.
Is that so difficult to overcome? And does it mean that if you overcome that, you are already so on?
No, if you overcome doubt, it doesn't mean that you're
okay, that's
Sotapanna. A Sotapanna has eradicated doubt so that they can never have doubts again because they've seen the truth.
Right.
But the fact that one doesn't have doubts doesn't mean that one is a Sotapanna.
I think for me, Bhante, the first hindrance is the biggest, most difficult, because we are attached to all the desires in the world.
Well, different people have different
Yeah,
hindrances.
I suppose so.
But I think the Buddha put sensual desire
That's the
and
biggest problem for me, actually.
yeah, and ill will.
honest.
I call those the major hindrances.
Yeah, right.
Because those are the coarsest ones and the ones that are usually the most disturbing. Then the other 3 are subtler. Dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse and doubt. They're subtler
Skeptical doubt. Yeah. Thank
and not as oppressive as the 2 big ones.
Yeah, because most of us, we are trying to enjoy life. I mean, reality. And that becomes the biggest problem.
Yeah.
At least that's what it is for me.
Yeah. Okay, we could take one more question, then we'll have to call it a day.
There's a question.
Ante, there's a question on the internet.
Oh, okay.
It's actually, you answered that numerous times. Is jhana needed for arhan, and asking for example which arhan liberated by dry insight?
I think I've dealt with this numerous times.
Yes.
And it's not so directly related to the sutta.
How?
Yeah. Okay, so let us then, did you have fun?
I was just going to ask if you could maybe sum up the sutta, because it seems like there's 2 things going on. There's the renunciation aspect.
Yeah.
And there's also the monk asking Buddha how he might have handled the situation differently,
Yeah.
been more spontaneous with the prince so that the prince didn't get so turned
Yeah.
off so quickly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there seems to be that there were 2 things going on.
I see what the 2 things are, though I don't. Let me just get the picture again. Okay, I think we could see it, what brings them together. Okay, the 2 parts maybe would be the statement at the beginning of the sutta, when the Buddha is discussing with the novice about King Jayasena's statement, so that it's impossible for the prince who's living in the midst of sensual pleasures to know, to see, and to realize that which is to be known through renunciation. And what is to be known is that it's possible when a monk is dwelling ardent, diligent, and resolute that he could attain unification of mind or one-pointedness of mind. So maybe one-pointedness of mind would be the topic of the sutta. Okay, so the Buddha then first, using the two similes of the trained and untrained elephants and of the two friends who go to the mountain, to enforce the point that those who are obstructed by the obstacles, in this case sensual desire, can't know that which is to be realized through renunciation. Okay, and then the rest of the sutta, the body of the sutta, can be seen as a way of explaining how one reaches that stage where one can know and see what was the initial thesis, that it's possible to achieve unification of mind. Okay, so let us end for the day. We could just do short 3 half bows. And please remember that there are postcards here about the jazz concert.